Well, looks like I'm live. I am of the belief all my settings are correct. I can hear myself in my own ears. Just going to quickly check my mic, mute settings. Let me check my microphone, audio default. Looks like it's working. So, all right, good. There we are. All right. So, welcome to everybody who's here right now. Looks like it's slowly building up. I come to you today to give you information and fill in maybe a big mystery sandwich for all you who have wondered or heard tidbits about it. But it is about how, at the international base headquarters, um, how it came about that they inspected all incoming and outgoing personal mail and packages for all of the staff located at that base. Uh, my history associated with it started back in 1980, late 82, early 83. I'm going to say late 82 was my true handshake with it. But minimally, when I arrived to the base in May of 1982, part of my onboarding, my introduction to the base, they hand you what is commonly known as a new staff member routing form. New staff member routing form. It's a form design that lays out all the steps that you would go through to ensure that you've met the essential people responsible for looking after you or knowing about you, creating folders about you, um, collecting emergency contact information. That would be the simple relation to today's world and the human human resources departments, where you start a new job, you list how you want your paycheck taken care of, your IRS status and tax filing information, and your emergency contacts in the event of some emergency situation occurring in the workplace. They know who to contact and who they are and all that, and work and act on your behalf. So, very similar in the Sea Organization or in Scientology, but it's pretty significantly more in depth. And what I mean by that is, not only do they uh, collect your active personnel files, and in my case, at the international headquarters base, I had arrived there from another organization lower in the food chain of the Sea Organization down in Los Angeles, an organization down there. So when I arrived, with me also came my personnel files, my personnel folder, whatever there was, sealed in a brown paper bag that I was basically currying myself, and it's sealed so I didn't have access to it. So I had to hand it off to my new HR, or in Scientology called the HEO, Hubbard Communications Office. That is Scientology's and Sea Organization's HR department. So arriving with all that, I arrive in the HCO HR department and sat down, and they pull out the writing form, put my name on it, sign the date, my starting date, my arrival date, and start me down the first thing, start me down the various steps on the writing form. So part of that is being routed to, um, getting a call, and that's not supposed to be happening, but that is spam. See ya, spam. Sorry about that. Um, so basically, you get established on this writing form. Um, you work your way through all the various necessary divisions. Necessary meaning I would go through the respective terminals, meet with the respective terminals in the Hubbard Communications Office, such as the Director of Communications, him understanding, basically it's shaking hands with the person that's going to delivering my mail, or all communications, if it's an internal communication or and all that, they would, this person will also inform me of how all the mail is dealt with, the times of day of the mail, when the mail is collected, when it needs to be, where and when it needs to be put by a certain time of day to, it's just like knowing when your mailman's going to pick up your mail. You become accustomed to know what time of day that is. So every day, by whatever you've come to understand of when your mailman shows up, you make sure your mail's in there by there. You make sure your little red flag's up. So they basically just do an orientation to how your communications handled, and they document for themselves, for their own job responsibility, the director of communications, your full name. So if anything shows up in the mail uh, with your full name on it, they know exactly who to write it to. So, I think I'm speaking way beyond more than necessary with that, but um, and part of that also is at the time that I arrived in 82, there was only 3 people identified as full-time staff members in security that dealt with security related matters with that property. At the time, there was very minimal uh, perimeter fence or any fencing at all established around the property. It was originally intended to be very open and not compound, or looking like some sort of compound by just the nature or default of having fencing up somewhere. So um, I'm just a quick hello to all those in the chat. I see there's a number of people here. Just, hey, folks. Not sure from where you're at, but I see a familiar one, Janet from another planet. Um, and there's Roberta, Melanie, Diet Coke 73. Thank you for being here. Anyways, back on my track. I'm routed, and mind you, every time you go through a step, or you move from one step to the next step, or the next point of contact, or the next terminal in the organization you're going to go meet with, that person, it's required to obtain that person's signature, that they sign off that you've met with them and they've obtained the needed information that they needed for themselves to perform their jobs as a service point to me, or they obtain the information they needed from me to them. And therefore it's signed off and I move on to the next person in line. So when it came to security, you're sat down and you're informed about general security rules. You're handed a policy, the base policy established at that particular time, the do's and don'ts. You read it. They do a standard. They check you out on it, so they give you a chance to read it and understand it. You hand the issue back to them, and then they check your understanding of it. They do the standard. The Scientology procedure is they first check your knowledge of all the words that were used to generate such policy or letter that you've just read, and then they check you against the knowledge of it. This is all verbalized. It's all random, or maybe of established questions and all that. And it's not a pass or fail in the sense of typical answer questions, multiple choice questions, and then if you get 70% or more, you pass, or below 70%, you fail. If you don't give the right answer, they fail you on it, hand you the issue back to restudy it, and then it's just this give and take process until the person you're routed to representing security feels satisfied that you understand clearly on an immediate basis what is required of you to maintain security at the base. So at the get-go, arriving to that base, the mindset's already set that you are in a security sensitive environment and you hold a great deal of responsibility of maintaining security to the security sensitive environment. And there's consequences if you fail to do so. And these are the consequences, and yada, yada, yada. So, and at that time, you're also, you sign the non-disclosure agreements, where it was a very formally written letter. It was all officially printed out, but no, not on official letterhead. It was just like a local communication that somebody typed up and they sent it to the printer guy who would then in turn print it, and then as people came in security, they could just pull it and say, read this and sign here on the line. But that letter, that communication stated, and it further solidified the security aspects of the base, wherein it stated in plain language that you cannot speak to anybody outside of the perimeters of this base about activities, details of staff, activities of the base, past, present, or of the future, any knowledge that you have of the base, you speak nothing about. In the event that you find yourself, and this is the stuff that I'm paraphrasing, if that I recall to the best of my knowledge, that you gosh, where was I? Oh, I'm sorry, by the way. If you may have not noticed, I got a little sun this last week. I was out fishing on the mighty Columbia, and then I ended up fricking cutting myself shaving and got this annoying little thing below on my lip. So there's nothing stuck there. Nobody needs to reach out and go, hey, you got a bat near your cave there, Jackson. And it's just that's what happens when I sunburn. So this NDA clearly lays out the things you can and cannot say. And basically, there isn't anything you can say. It's all about what you are not and cannot say. And it's clearly laid out in there of the consequences that if you do it, and they even amplify it that, and I'll give an example. If you find yourself conversing with somebody outside of that property or down at Los Angeles at another Sea Organization location, and you're speaking to people who have not been cleared to be at the international headquarters, and just generically, I'll give examples as if you talk about volleyball, but that's a topic you're not supposed to talk about. And then you also talk about watering the grass. For each of those, I would be faced with a $10,000 fine for having spoke about volleyball, and then another $10,000 in the same sentence that I would be speaking with this person with, told them about the watering of the grass. That would be another $10,000. So the whole idea is to convey and impose upon you that they don't want you talking about anything, and for every out security, every meaning to more than just one subject, you would be heavily fined. So they just entrap you with this big being in debt. And I guess was the way in which they lock you in to keep your freaking mouth shut. And that idea, for every instance of out security that you go, it's an automatic $10,000 fine that you have to pay. And that was kind of an awkward idea at such a young age in my life to understand. But oh well, I had no plans of telling anybody anything. So yeah, sure, okay, I'll sign it. Also part of that was being informed that your first and foremost educational course that you'll be put on as part of your training, it's a basic. It's considered part of the basics, the backbone stuff that you need to know about the facility and place that you're working at. So, one of the basic courses you would do would be the security course, where that is an actual course that is composed of all the security related issues, all the security related information that you would sit down in any one of your 2.5 hour periods of study time that's allotted to you, or that you're expected to adhere to every day of studying anything and everything in Scientology. But in this case, you're studying about the do's and don'ts of the international base headquarters. And so after I get through this initial writing form, I'm to do nothing else and can be not trusted to be anywhere else on the property until I complete the security course. So even though I was trusted enough to be there, I still had to be looked after, and I couldn't go to certain areas of the property until I completed this this course and receive my certification for it. And then, the shackles were off basically, and where I could roam the property, and every staff member would, have the knowledge that I'm a secure staff member who could be trusted simply because I've done my security course and all that. I'm hoping that I'm kind of relating the undertone of what goes on, but um, that usually took about, you were expected to get that done within a few days, and then you move on to what other studies that are instructed or expected of you to complete, through the rest of your time spent at that base. But nonetheless, you couldn't do anything else, um, or be trusted anywhere else, uh, uh, until you completed your security course. So now, back on the writing form. There I am in security. I was informed of that policy that I was to adhere to get through my security course. Well, they also inform you and hand you a form that informs you that your personal mail will be inspected, both incoming and outgoing mail, and all of your outgoing mail needs to be left unsealed. It will be sealed at the inspection point and then put into the U.S. mail system. And then, also the security person would relate to you that basically you're going to find that any mail coming to you through the U.S. mail system, you will find that it's been opened, and the reason why it's open is because it's our in-house policy that we inspect the mail. And the purpose of inspecting the mail is to protect you, being me, um, and the organization's effort to protect me from any outside concerns or threats that I guess that they've commonly found. They really glorify it, but that's their justification as to why they um, are so intrusive in your personal life. And by signing this agreement, you authorize them to inspect my mail, both incoming and outgoing. And it literally was a small paragraph laying out that your mail will be inspected, and that there's a reason why it is to protect you and the organization. And you're expected to adhere to it. Never once did it pass my mind that what if I were to not sign this? But I came to realize later that because there were people that did not want to sign it, they refused to sign it. If you refuse to sign it, that opens up the door to you're now considered a suspicious suspect, somebody who's now here for unstated intentions and purposes, and you become a security concern simply by the fact that you choose not to have your mail inspected. Me now knowing what I know, they don't make it aware to you that you have that choice, and if you choose not to have your mail inspected, then so be it. They need to keep track of who is going to have their mail and who is not agreed to have their mail inspected, and allow your mail to come to you unsealed. Sealed and not inspected. So, um, yeah. So basically, that was the fine line in your introduction as a brand new base staff member of yet another discovery of potentially there being somebody who's here and is going to be functioning and acting and believe in going against the grain. So, by default, by exercising your right of choice, freedom of choice, if you chose no, that's okay. I'd rather not have my mail inspected. Your normal everyday life, business, organization would go, okay, no biggie, and move on. Well, no, not Scientology or Sea Org. They would take it as a red flag and address you as a red flag and pester you until they get to the point of you spitting out something as to why, that makes sense in their minds and satisfies their understanding as to why you choose not to have your mail. So that could also result, which it had through my stay and working in security. People would just show up to the base for one day and be spun on their heels and sent away simply because they would not sign the agreement to have their mail inspected. So if that helps you better understand highly how high regard the church pays towards the significance of someone not willing to have their mail inspected, they take that as a personal offense and a security concern, and you're not somebody we thought you were, and we can't trust you, and all sorts of stuff. It's just opens up a huge can of unnecessary can of worms. So um I'm going to quickly jump over here too, because I want to keep track. Because again, I hope you listened to my previous videos, because I chose not to have any moderators on my channel for now. I had people reach out offering out of the kindness of their heart to be a moderator to help keep the riffraff out of my chat. Well, you know what? I found that has opened the door to moderators who, out of the kindness of their heart, to help for moderators to be pestered about comments that are not being allowed to be in, and it just I think I don't need to explain much there. So for right now, I choose not to have any moderators. And if anybody does express their interest and reach out to me to want to be my moderator, it's not that I eventually will not. It just somehow this toxic community, the toxicity has been allowed to come into our community, and that was one of them. Is our moderators are getting jumped on for their involvement of their over their simple kindness. I think it's bullshit. So there's Mandy. Gosh, I haven't, Mandy Gonzalez. She's here. She and I haven't communicated for a while, simply because I haven't been doing videos. But hello, Mandy. And then Witness. Hello, Witness. Oh wow, Jackson. An interesting little test, huh? Yeah, it was an interesting little test. Arriving to the base. There's Steve-O live on the Columbia River with Jack Span Moorhead. It said, glad to hear you got out on the river fishing. Yep. Baka buddy. And Witness saying hello. And Mandy, I'm the one that makes, no, I know. I was going to pull yours up and show what you made. It's just too far behind me, but you can see it right there, Maddie, the little white thing that's in the black one next to it. Those are the two ornaments that you made. Still madly impressed that you even took the time to bring your mad art skills and talent to do what you did. And if I'm just one, I think that should be an abundance of thankfulness to your creativity and bringing that to this community. And I will forever personally be thankful just on that fact alone, that you took the time to make those things. So smiles to you. Oh, I see. Steve-O fat fingered. Yeah, he made a typo in there. I was trying to pronounce his typo, and comically sounding funnier to announce it than to read it. So anyway, so back to my mail. Okay, so having signed that document and be in agreement with my mail being checked, that was the beginning of a long relationship of also my mail being inspected. But because I was in security, yeah, my mail would be inspected, but it was just kind of like rip it open, see that there's no garbage in it. It was never, I guess there was a double standard for lack of basics, but not wholeheartedly. But I don't know. There wasn't as much concern about the incoming and outgoings of security personnel, just by default, I guess. So plus I didn't have to wait as long as most base staff. I would usually just get my mail put directly on my desk or handed to me by the mail inspector, or I would take it myself because I was the one checking the mail. So I didn't have to wait either way, as long as your average staff member did. So I guess by that, I felt special. My mail wasn't as choked off as others. So that was just a weird afterthought that I realized at one time that I had. Okay, so that was my telling you of my experience of how I was being introduced to the security standards and requirements of the base, and how the base policy became, I don't know where the idea is we have to inspect people's mail, and if we're going to inspect it, we have to get them to sign a document, and that document probably run by church attorneys to be cleared that, yeah, that's good enough to cover our ass, have them sign it that way, and all that. It didn't require, I think it did require a witness that I agreed to it, and that would just be signed by the person that you're sitting with at that time. So, I may have been one eventually in security to always be the one that new staff brought to the base. You would commonly find it would always be my signature on it by default. So, um, I'm just trying to relate that little tidbit of just kind of what it was like. Out of 100 people's new base staff member routing form, you would probably find my signature on 80% of those. So I pretty much was aware of how many people's mail we had to check and whose mail was going to be checked and all that. Um, I don't know if anybody prior to my arrival to that base had signed similar letters. I don't know when it was instituted, but minimally in May of 1982, that's when I became aware of mail being inspected. My previous Sea Org experience, which actually started in 1979 in Los Angeles up until 1982, any organization I was part of down there, which was 2 or 3 different ones, none of them announced the fact, or nor was I ever aware of the fact that mail was being inspected, and it needed to be inspected on the incoming or outgoing basis. There was no special instructions that put your mail here. There is an internal Hubbard policy on how communications for the organization to be handled, but even in those policies, that what was referred to as green on whites, there was never anything stated in there about personal mail being inspected. So it was kind of a process that was established, in my belief, at the international headquarters, and it eventually was bled down to Los Angeles. But I don't think it was bled down or pushed down to lower level organizations and put in. It's to strict play as much as it was at the base. I was never in on that end of it, so I can't speak on behalf of the the LA or lower middle management organizations mail standards. All I do know that um, it initially was attempted at one point, whether it's upheld to today, in all mail, regardless of what organization you're part of, is being inspected. I can't speak on that behalf because I don't know. I would suspect to one degree or another, the mail is captured, and for those staff members who are of high interest by the organization, maybe their mail is selectively checked, and everyone else is let go and gone through. I'm actually starting to speak about something I truly don't know anything about, so I can't speak on that. Um, so um, let's see. I'm mentally making sure that I'm kind of hitting a good timeline here of representing what I remember, how it all started and how it came about. Because I also wasn't in security initially when I arrived there. So between May of 82 to late 1982 to early 1983 is when I became directly involved with security and anything and everything that security was responsible for or was interested in and was involved with. So um, upon my arrival to security, um, I was part of the initial organized branch of security or department of security, um, established officially on our organization board, uh, more so than the 3 that were initially there. Then the initial 3 guards were Kenny Siebold, Matt Pesh, and this gentleman Jim Cup. Rest in peace, Jimmy. He's no longer with us. I know, Matt, if you're out there listening right now, we all know what that guy was like. He was a class act. Loved motorcycles. In fact, he was, I believe, on a path of professional motorcycle racing before he joined the Sea Organization. But nonetheless, really class act guy. So, and then when security was officially formed in a public sense that these people are now going to be full-time security guards. No longer are staff going to be temporarily coming on a rotational basis to patrol the property or stand at the gates and monitor who comes in and out. There's going to be official security guards. In essence, by establishing security, it relieved the general staff of an additional duty that they would randomly do and end up staying up all night for and ruining what precious sleep they had available to them. So I'm sure organizationally there was a big sigh of relief when security force was established. Little did they know in our beginning stages of what was coming down the pipeline of how security would have heavily affect their lives, which I was part of that. So I'm going to just not allow myself to go down too much of a tangent on what that became, but right now just highlight on the security mail checking and of their personal mail and packages. Because I see the question, and holy smoke, somebody from North Wales. Wow. There we go. And that is Dave Bo Cuddle. I'm going to bring up your question here. Question: if Davey needed to order a new Apple box for delivery to Gold Base, how were his packages handled? Did anyone dare to inspect first? Good question. Initially, and this was back in 1982, early 83, all base mail, didn't matter your executive position or not, was inspected by one of us guards, myself included. I specifically remember inspecting Dave Miscavige's, Mark Yeager's, Norman Starkey's, Ray Midoff's, Jesse Prince's, Vicky Asnerand, all of their mail, opening it, seeing the letters that they would write out, because we had a mailbox mounted to the wall down in our eating area that was where staff were directed to drop any letters that they were going to write to the outside world, and had a U.S. stamp on it, that's where they were to put it. And then us security guards would collect that there one time a day or twice a day and inspect it. So even Vicky Asneran, other executives, if they chose to write a letter, that's where they would put it. It didn't last long, but Dave, being the one you're specifically asking about, if he was looking to order a new Apple box, well, first of all, Mr. Shawowski can make one for him and probably send it to him in the mail if he so desires. Yes, I was handling his mail. I can't tell you I remember much other than he never really wrote much of it at all. The most of the stuff that I would get in the mail for him was incoming mail, magazine subscriptions, from Sports Illustrated to Penthouse, Playboy magazine. That was one thing that I made the general observation, that there was nobody else on the base that received such magazines, with exception to the highest of the highest church executives. There was probably 7 or 8 of them that came in through the mail. And this was back in the day when Playboy magazine wasn't just sent out like Sports Illustrated is today, where you can see the cover and flip through the pages. Initially, I guess mail regulations required them to cover potential nudity or anything adult-like natured mail. So they just had a pretty wide paper band wrapped around the magazine, and the magazine itself could easily slip out during handling, and but they would put that paper band around it and then put a mailer label on it showing who it was being mailed to, and that was my chance to basically, I could just roll the magazine in half, and it would easily slip out of that paper band. I could leaf through the Playboy magazine, get the information that I was seeking, roll the magazine back up, and slip it in the paper band, and then forward it on to Dave. Now, and I literally was instructed to go leaf through every magazine to see if anything was stuck in between all the pages. So I had to do that with every Playboys. But as a young growing little boy, nothing grew from beyond the visual entertainment that I would get out of it. So, you know, no funky activities occurred. I'm just trying to throw some humor in an otherwise very morbid topic. Why would we inspect it all? But yeah, eventually, we were directed to route any and all Religious Technology Center or RTC mail to RTC's own HR division. So what was done with it from there, I do not know, but that's what the eventual instructions were. I no longer, that ceased security going through executives mail, and it was that responsibility was passed on to their respective, the executive's respective HR department or HCO. So yeah, initially it was, but eventually no. And there was a lot more time of no inspecting days, but I would certainly see his mail coming in, because we collected all incoming base mail and then we would just route it accordingly, send it to where it needed to go. Some we didn't inspect, most of it we did. So Bob, is that Buck Buddy? Buck Buddy? Hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly. Here's Witness throwing a question. Would you censor the information coming in and out? How would you look for only physical threats, or would you read for idea threats? Okay, would you censor the information coming in and out? Uh, Censor coming in, no. Restrict the information coming in, yes. And I guess by definition, it would be censoring. It'd be censoring it from the recipient. If what we were reading about in the letter, or if there was anything included in the mail, such as somebody writing, "Hey, I saw this enclosed article that I tore out of a magazine that I'm forwarding to you in a magazine. You should read it." We would purposely take that out, such as if it was a bad article written about Scientology or anybody or anything related to Scientology. We would take it out, and that letter would be forwarded to the respective person's HR or HCO department, where they would be pulled in and sat down and go, "What's this all about?" Or, "We received this in the mail from your father, your mother, your brother, your sister, your cousin, your dog that you left behind," or whatever. What's this about? And what are we going to do to handle it? And the organization would not let go of it until they were satisfied that a proper handling was done. So a bad image wasn't left created about the church, nor did we feel internally that somebody was trying to get somebody from the inside to leave or to forward internal information. There's a whole array of stuff, but no. Or would we read for idea threats? I'm not sure if you're asking as if we read publications and how to, say if there was FBI or CIA or Interpol publications about the inspection of mail and what to look for. No, but I do remember there were some letters that required us to look out for, like they were anticipating it showing up in the mail, and if they did, I could not open it simply because they did not want to uh let's see, they wanted to preserve any evidence that would come in that letter, and the letter would be forwarded to somebody who could pull fingerprints from it. I do remember one thing in particular, one individual in particular that for years and years and years I looked out for was any and all mail from Arnie Lerma. And for those who have been around in this community of ours, you probably may be aware that Arnie was a long-time outspoken critic of Scientology. I do not necessarily remember his history of how he came about to be a critic, whether that was through him having been on staff and then had a falling out with the church and left staff and was an early on protester. I could do my homework on that to hopefully satisfy that information for you. But nonetheless, Arnie would always write these letters that look, in my comical explanation, like he wrote it with his left foot. Um, what I mean by that is I assume that he wrote with his right hand and his normal writing would be regulated. If he uses right foot, it would be awkward. But to make it double as bad, he chose to use his left foot and can't write with his left foot, but somehow would kick out a word, and I would have to decipher these things. Sometimes he would write letters with such scribble and garbage writing, or he would also do those clippings where you clip out like a mosaic letter, if I'm calling it correctly, where you cut letters from a newspaper of different font sizes and different types to make it look all goofy, but you would create a sentence or a statement in that letter through all these little clippings and send send letters in that way. So I always opened his letters, see what it was, document it that we received it on this date at this time, and then I would always forward such letters of that type to Religious Technology Center, particularly initially the RTC reports officer. But it wasn't the RTC HCO department. There was actually a terminal within RTC that was set up to deal with such external concerns or external security threats, where special handling would happen. And I believe they would keep file of such letters that we would receive in the mail and all that. So, yes, witness, like a ransom letter. Arnie would write in letters like that. And I remember distinctly early on, and I say early on, like the late 82 throughout 83, Ernie was pretty aggressive, or Arnie Lerner was pretty aggressive on writing regular letters. They were randomly done. It wasn't like always on every Tuesday would it show up. It just, there was minimally at least a couple of months. So him being an example of outside critics writing in to church executives, it always made it to the executives, but the executives had their filters in place so that it wouldn't show up on their desk. That would be routed to somebody whose job was designed to specifically deal with that kind of crap. So I hope that answered your question, witness. And if you need further clarification on there, I'm sorry, just kick it out there again. Here's another one by Melanie Johnson. Melanie or Melanie? So I'll just say Melanie. Did you ever think, even if it was to yourself, this isn't right or it's illegal, or did you think you were being a good employee and doing what you were told? The second part of that would be the more overriding belief that I had. There were things that I would question, and I would question them only kind of when I realized, like, I was sitting in the main security booth, where our unfiltered phone lines were established, where I could just pick it up and call directly down to OSA, and I would ask who I knew to call down there at OSA. Go, explain to me how this, what authorizes us to inspect people's mail. How is that not a breach of personal privacy? And then I would be explained that simply by virtue of them being a 24/7 staff member on the property, their rights were kind of turned over to us. So we could, it was explained to me that we can inspect their personal belongings at any time, and as an effort to address any perceived security threats that this person could be, or threats that may have been imposed upon them, we reserve that right to inspect anything and everything about them to protect our own safety and their safety. So that's the way it was presented to me from legal or from OSA. And once that seed was set in my mind, it made sense. And therefore that opened up the door to never question it again. How's that? I hope that answers your question. But yeah, I did wonder about it. When I did, I never wondered about it. It's like, oh my God, this could be illegal. I need to look at this myself. I didn't have the resources to verify that except calling OSA. So that's what I did. And Melanie, I'm hopeful that that answered your question. And you're welcome, witness. The handling of contraband comes in is interesting. Yes, it is. Here's the missus. Question. up there. Sorry, I forgot to put Q first. That's okay. Also, I never see anyone there except at the guard gate. Is there hardly anyone there, or are there tunnels? The missus. I'm assuming that you reside within Riverside County, or generally, um, yeah, within Riverside County, where you find the need to travel through that road, and maybe you dog leg off your normal journey to go through there just because you can. Excuse me. Uh, I never see anyone there. Now, that is an atmosphere that's being created by default over the course of time, where the reason you don't see many people there, because quite honestly, most of all their work concerns are performed inside buildings. So there wasn't much out need to be outside, even almost in between buildings. No special arrangements were made to build the buildings to interconnect, so they never have to go outside. But being the resort that it was, um, the activities, there were interconnected buildings from one building to the next, such as the lodges to Massacre Canyon Inn, our dining hall. But I don't know, the activities never demanded people to go far from their office, and if they did, they'd walk between buildings and excuse me. They would walk between buildings, out one door, into another, and it was just a quick exchange on the outside world. So, yeah, if anybody you would see would generally be a grounds maintenance crew, somebody out trimming the rose bushes, pulling weeds, cutting grass, and stuff like that. So, but there's not many base staff there now as there once was. When I was last there was, I think we had just breached just over 900 staff. This was back in 1997. If I remember correctly, it was either 865 or 965, something like that. Somewhere in those numbers. Definitely higher than 850, definitely lower than 1,000. But there was by that number, there was a lot of people going in between buildings and all that. So there's a lot more hustle bustle. To get people to go in really quick, I had installed this horn system, this old ship's horn, on top of the garage down there, that I had a control button set up in the booth that we could hit. They would sound a horn to the property. We had a high-end horn and a low-end horn. So if you know anything about sound, I had to get this alarm system initiated to get the staff secured. That by a simple annunciation system, I thought about placing speakers all around the property. That was a lot of, and if you know anything about audio, that requires a lot of wiring, a lot of work, a lot of amplifiers, this, that, and the other thing to install, where I just found one location, found a ship's horn that produced the low end sound waves and the high end sound waves. High end and low end work differently as over distance, and the low end, more importantly, penetrates buildings. Given an example of today's generation, how they got these crazy sound systems in their cars, and you can hear them pounding, boom, 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 and you can feel the sound waves. Well, that same theory, I applied that to satisfying my needs to get all my bass announced. So in the event some protesters showed up to the gate or an intruder happened, I just hit a button. They would sound that horn. Everybody would hear about it, and anybody who was outside would go inside, and those who were inside knew not to go outside until my guards went around and gave the all clear. So tunnels. There's only 2 tunnels there. There's no tunnels like there are down in Los Angeles, that when the original hospital was built, they had also initial tunneling built in just for the nature of that hospital functioning in between places. At the international headquarters, there's only 2 tunnels that were built and put in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, that allowed us safe travel across the highway, because traveling by foot across the highway and Highway 79, that was a 55 mile an hour travel zone for vehicles, and it was quite difficult to safely get across the road. Some accidents happened. No staff were ever hit. I know a couple staff members' pets were hit, but nonetheless, it's a high-speed road. So we pushed for and had installed 2 tunnels that you could travel either by small vehicle or bike or by foot underneath the highway safely at any time, at any time of the day. So yes, that's the extent of the tunnels. So there you go, the misses. Yeah, the grounds are beautiful, and if you drive by there today, you're going to see that they're green. Well, you know what? That's a telltale sign that there's people there. I don't know what it is they produce, but minimally, they are a glorified maintenance crew for a church asset. There's nothing much there for the original intended purpose for that base to exist, which was to produce all the audio visual products for Scientology International. Dave has now taken all that work, 90% of it, and routed and set it up in Los Angeles, and mostly out of spite, but there's a backstory to that statement. Because he no longer trusts the people in the base, so he no longer resides there. So he had everything moved to Los Angeles, paid all that money to set it up, bought a TV station, yada yada yada, and leaving the imp base staff wondering, what are we supposed to now do? And then him just trickling and feeding them little important projects to make them believe that they hold some value still, and their mission statement changed, but their goal is still the same type of projects. But for the most part, every building, as we all know, that exists, at any man-made building, requires man-made maintenance and upkeep. Buildings just don't exist on their own. So the grass doesn't grow on its own. The grass doesn't look trimmed on its own. Everything requires nurturing and caring for. So in my estimation, for the most part, most of the staff members there are just a glorified maintenance crew. Majority of those buildings that you see as you drive through are not occupied because they don't have the staff members occupied, and nor are the functions and activities that went on in those buildings aren't there anymore. They were been taken off the base. So by default, there's nothing to be done in those buildings. And I can't imagine any new facets of Scientology or needs for this organization being put there because the staff don't exist for it. And there's a whole thing. But on the basic level, you say you drive by there, it's a beautiful place. Yes, it is. And that was one thing that I enjoyed being there, is it was nice. The grounds were nice. It made for a comfortable, homey feeling. I truly enjoyed it. But for that to exist, someone's got to sweep the sidewalks. Someone's got to make sure water's still flowing through the pipes, coming out of the spigots, the toilets flush, the lights come on and off, the doors open and close, the doorknobs themselves function, the gates open and close, the roofs don't leak, the drains are cleared of debris, all that stuff. Oh, someone's got to do that. So that's what my conclusion is. My educated guess is that they are a glorified maintenance crew. Excuse me. All right. Let's see. Let's see. Okay, witness. Here we go. Jackson at Gold Base. Are they still maintaining the LRH house in his daily clothes? You know, witness, I at the time that L. Ron Hubbard house that you now see or have seen on Google Earth or by others that have taken it, that building was in the planning and initial building stages that I was part of, helping design the security system for it and the security layout and the relocation of the security perimeter and all aspects of security for that. I left before it was actually built, so I can't say what I've been informed of by those that I know that were there, that his daily clothes, etc., his daily clothes being laid out was something that was at play before that house was done, that I witnessed for years being done, because I patrolled his house and I had the access to go in and out of it. So I got to see, when I went in that house, the clothes that were laid out for that day, and the shoes, and his glass of water with cellophane put over it, type of thing. And all of his clothes that were being laundered and how they washed them. And he had a huge, his closet that contained his clothes could have held, I'm going to say, at least 2 full-size Cadillacs and a couple of a couple of Kawasaki mules, if you know what those are. Those are like I forget what they call them. The new mini dune buggies. That's just to give you the side of how much square footage. I'd say there was probably at least 900 square feet that's allowed for storage of his clothes. And yeah, from all of his cowboy hats, his different type of hats, his shirts, his shoes, his polyester pants, his polyester shirts, his platform shoes, his cowboy boots. I saw it all the jewelry that he had, his bowline ties, his different type of ties. Yeah, I mean, all that stuff was just freely hanging in this room and organized by color and in seasonal type. And all of his shorts. I mean, you name it. His sandals. He had tons of sandals. Imagine all that stuff from the 60s and 70s. It was still there. So um, I can't speak witness of what's done today, but I highly suspect that they are. And again, paying value to the staff that are left at that base, giving them the warm and fuzzies that they're still contributing something positive to the future of mankind. It's a sad statement to say, but that is a fact. That would be a fact. And again, I can only give you an educated guess, having been there and witnessed how things are run and who it was run by and the deep-seated loyalty to upholding that. Highly suspect it's still there. Okay. The misses. Interesting thinking now, what about these men in black with the sunglasses in the guard gate? Who picked their uniforms? Tom Cruise. They take the job very seriously. Okay. I don't know about the men in black. I do know that there was outside hired professionals. They're not there full time. They're probably only mostly there when they know some attention's coming to the property, but those are expensive hired professionals. If they have a daily expense to be there 24/7, then they'll be there 24/7. I can't say that. The security uniforms came about. I forget who initially did the initial design, but back in the late 80s, we were all issued new uniforms, and with that came a new design of that's where the security patch that you see today down in LA. It looks like a California Highway Patrol patch, but a lot less fonts and letters in it, but it's got a similar design and the color scheme and all that, and it just says security officer, not security guard, to give us more of a official presence. I don't know. It was all by design. It looked professional. I got to tell you, at the time, it was certainly nice to get a fresh set of threads. I'll tell you that. Brand new shoes, and my gosh, that was such a relief. So nice to be able to hold watch with a jacket that actually would keep me warm, and have shoes that didn't have holes in it, or pants that weren't too small or were too big, or it had holes in it that we just kept sewing up ourselves in an effort to have some clothes over our bodies. Who picked their uniforms? There was a whole project that was done that was run based out of Los Angeles, and there was international based representatives part of that project that contributed to that. I don't remember right now top of my head to answer that question. Tom Cruise didn't have anything to do with the uniforms. And there's sweetheart Cece. My gosh, that's a blast from the past, man. Boy, do I remember you, Cece. Cece, to the best of my knowledge, my mother is not doing well. She is physically incapable of getting around on her own. She is held up. She's residing in a double wide trailer somewhere. That's what I understand. What I do know is I don't know, and that's really the sad part of it. And Osa, do a brother a solid. Let me know what my mom's doing. Take a picture of it. Send it to me. That would be great of you. You can at least, entertain your inner self that if you have the ability to let another human being know about and how his mother's doing, send me a picture, send me a letter. There's no harm in that. I won't return a letter to piss her off. Have her send me one, please. That would be great. But Cece, great hearing from you. I think I'm owed you some more specifics. I think you've reached out. I'm not sure if I answered all your questions or text message or emails that you've sent me. So If you feel you have other questions you'd like to ask me off air, feel free to ask. Okay, sweetie. You are a great memory in my world. You'll never know, but that's the way it went in the Sea Org, right? I just remember your cheerful, beautiful smile, and that's I'll leave that there. All right. I don't think I fully am an hour into my thing. I still don't believe I've completely laid out all of the mail checking lines, but I'm here's CC. But I want to get to people's questions, so questions come up while I'm telling my story. So wasn't it Val Page? And I remember Val. She used to do the initial runs to the imp base, the communication driving, the driving of communication and packages between Los Angeles and the international headquarters. Excuse me. She had clearance to do that. She was the initial one that did that until this girl Brenda Black and this other lady were set up to handle it. So let's see. Wasn't it Val Page that did the uniform mission back in the 80s? We even got a trunk too. Yeah, we got to see her trunk. And Val may have been done that down in LA. You know, you tickle a memory cell about, yeah, I think Val did have a lot to do with it. I didn't relate with her much. I think I just saw the results of her hard work, more or less, and not realizing that the trunk filled with my new uniforms were all my guards' uniforms. And I'm talking a Foot Locker size. It was a typical Foot Locker custom made for Sea Org, had the Sea Org emblem on it, had a tray that you lifted out when you opened it, and it was pretty deep, and it contained everything, all your pants and shirts and jackets and shoes and everything. So I think CC, yes, you are correct. If I'm remembering to the best of my knowledge, sweetheart. All right. Yeah, the misses. I see you. They literally look like they walk out of the movie Men in Black. Yeah, I can see how you would see that. I don't see it the same way, to be honest with you, but they're the mystery, the elusiveness, the social ineptness that they have that's led to them doing what they do gives the outside world that impression, and it doesn't surprise me. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody says that looks like a Looney Tunes episode that you would watch on Saturday morning. You certainly, it wouldn't surprise me for people to see it and think that. So yeah, there's CC. I know you had a working relationship with my mom way beyond what I had. And, um, you know, yeah, I'm sure she would. Yeah, there's so much to be said right there. Uh, hey, Elsa, do a kind thing. Let Jackson know. Yeah. Thank you, Witness. Hey, Osa, listen to Witness. I'm sure you know who and what she's all about. So, um, help a brother and sister out here, huh? If I'm assuming that would be a female that I'm referring to. If not, I apologize. This is fellow contributor to my chat room. um, yeah, gosh, how cool would that be? And yes, Melanie, the disconnection is despicable and heartbreaking. Yeah, you know, I yeah, I'm not fearful of talking about it. It's just that's a whole different path. I do plan on going over a very personal story. Someone's reached out to me and interested in coming to their channel or platform and just laying out everything about how I left and the loss of the love of my life, my wife at the time, and just letting the world know the details behind all that. Um, I find it a unique compared to all the stories out there, but my story does not anywhere near override the many stories of tragedy that you've heard. But mine certainly plays a big role in it. I'll tell you that. Hey, Lori plays. I appreciate you showing up. I personally think I don't know a whole lot about you, except I've seen your very productive input in this community. Um, and it really warms my heart that somebody like you represents what a lot of us have afforded you the interest to come here. Not that it, you know, I don't know. I don't mean that to sound negatively, but through all of us who have brought the truth to the table, And you guys have come to discover that truth and to understand the truth that we're delivering. And as long as it's the truth that's being delivered to you, you've gained an actual understanding of what it was like for us to travel and play in the sandbox that we were all in. And you've then, by your own choice, decided to go out and raise and bring your voice to it. And I got to tell you, you know how heartfelt that feels, because out of all the hundreds of hours that I've spent with media outlets that have come to me, could you please tell us your story? And my naiveness thinking everything I'm telling them is going to hit the outside world, but it was all about ratings for them. And 99% of what I told them fell on the editing room floor. So experiencing that, you tend to choke yourself off from being so detailed to the next person coming to you, but the drive is always there to whoever wants to hear the story. I'm willing to tell you, as long as you don't change it, which they didn't do. It just, they'd always cut it. So, there's Miss Fabulous Rika. Rika and I set eyes on each other one morning while we were both showing up for a morning routine that we didn't even know we both came to the same place to enjoy. And that was at this local bagel place. And she walked in wearing I don't know, it was an SPTV shirt, or it was a shirt that she obtained from someone's merch store, their merchandise store, promoting her strong stance on being a voice about Scientology and all the bad it brings to the world. So I just like pointed out, I was like, hey, I know you. And she was like, what? And I said, well, I know that shirt. I know you got that shirt from somewhere. And then she recognized who I was. And we just have had, with the limited time, this great, oh, here she says it was an NN t-shirt. NN t-shirt. Never in. I'm going to think that that's what it was. Yeah, I'm a never in. Yeah, there you go. She just clarified it. See, she and I know think alike. And then her passion of going down and taking her time to protest, and the way that she protests is, in my opinion, very effective. And it's with compassion and empathy, and I just love that. And the fact that she does that is just like, Rika, you'll never know how much that warms my heart. And sharing that with the thoughts in my head of my history of being involved with that, to think that there's people like you out there that were always out there for me. And now you're there for those that I left behind, mostly in default. So I do look forward to our organic discover each other occurring again, so we can continue our conversation. Excuse my eye was itchy. So, give a brother a holler, huh? Oh yeah, that was awesome. We must grab a coffee in the bagel shirt. Yeah, we could grab an H8 shirt. How's that? We don't want to let the goods out too much of how we get together, to not bring unnecessary concern to it, but nonetheless, let's see. Thank you, Jackson. I will save this and play it back every time I feel discouraged. Oh, wow. Well, wow, Lori, if that means a lot to me, and thank you very much. Like I said, I think we as humans do things that we never realize how deep the impact goes, or the effects are created for another human being. I find that very fascinating, minimally for myself. But when you start seeing what it does for another, it just, it really proves the point that life really is good, right? That's a minimal way of looking at it. So let's see. CC, Lori, please tell me you are never discouraged. I was traveling, visiting for months. Now we'll keep up more. I do appreciate it. Oh, there's a little chit chat going on. Sorry, I didn't mean to bring your chit chat to the thing. So back to the mail. I think I left off people asking about, did I check executives mail? Now, the reason I decided to do this, because I wanted to give you a little look into what the daily operation was of the checking of the mail. So at the time, And because I don't have graphics to bring to you to show you the geographic, but there was a security booth that was nestled at the foot of the mountain behind the property on the north west side of the property. It was called the Beulah booth. The name of that came after a dog of one of L. Ron Hubbard's daughters, Suzette. She named Beulah. She had her own house there. The house was named Beulah. That's just the way we worked there. We always gave everything a unique name as much as possible. So by default, that security booth was up by Suzette's house, and the booth was named Beulah. So the Beulah booth. So that booth in particular was a fixed position security post, and it didn't require much, if any, physical foot patrol, because it was literally where the two corners of, and it was up on a steep hill, the top of a steep hill. So there was a narrow path that came to it, and it was literally on the perimeter's edge. So we were right at the cornering where a fence went down a steep slope and bordered a old fire break road, or what I came to later understand was the original stagecoach road that came through that for the historical days. And there's another story I can tell you about that. But the mail was collected in their HR department. The night guard, his name was Ron Cook initially, was the one set up primarily to check all mail, and he became the primary mail checker. Now, that isn't to say that he always did it, but initially he was the guard identified and set up within security, being held responsible for checking of all incoming and outgoing mail. So he was on night watch, and he would do it at night. So he would sit in that booth up there, and he would keep his windows open so he can hear anything around, and would respond to security concerns nearby, or if an alarm went off nearby, he would quickly go down and investigate and come back if necessary. But for the better part, he would spend his 8 to 10 hour, 12-hour watches up there checking mail. So he would gather it and collect it in an old box. The reams of paper would come in. Those, there were probably about 6 reams of paper, maybe 8 or 10 reams of paper in a box. And it was like a milk crate that has a stat, that saying, grab me a milk crate, you know what that means in your mind. Well, if you grab me a paper box, you know what that is. And that he had his own established paper box that he would pour the mail into and haul up to him. We would sit there. The first and foremost thing you would do is you would separate the mail. So you put the magazines and promo pieces in its own pile, and then you would separate the incoming mail and the outgoing mail, because we held a high responsibility. Even though we were a filtering entity, we would make sure the mail would get to where it was going and not interrupting that legal line, I guess, that's established of what we know as society and how mail goes. Put outgoing mail here, put ingoing mail there. We never knew what happened. Sometimes you leave it at a front desk at a hotel, and it would magically show up in your uncle's mailbox somewhere on the East Coast. There's a lot of integrity parts that were maintained on that whole path. You just never concerned yourself. So we contributed to that. We would never violate people's understanding that the mail always flowed. And that would even include if we stopped one of their letters coming in, the people that we would route it to, such as their own HR department, had 24 hours to do it. And my guards would inspect to make sure that person would have a sit down with the person of concern within a 24-hour period. And if they didn't, we as security had the right to impose discipline on those that didn't. So there was a level of integrity maintained about the movement of mail, and respect to everybody's personal communication lines. But once that point of contact was made, and whether the family member or the corresponding or related individual who wrote in the letter that created this concern, we didn't care about whether they were answered quickly. It was about addressing the discovery of this security concern was really the highlight of the matter. And the fact that we discovered it gave us the ability to control it and mold it to our liking. So And it was also a fact of discovery for them. So the mail pile will be separated, incoming, outgoing mail. And as time went on, the mail pile got bigger because there was more base staff on. So we would break it down into different organizations, maybe, because all that mail would get routed to different points. Once we received it coming in, we would drop it back off at different points. So let's see, other details I may be overlooking here. I don't think so. Now, also, there's not just the letters and promotional pieces that will come into the mail. There was also packages, whether it was a package, somebody ordered something through the mail, not to today's idea and understanding of package ordering and delivering, because that has significantly changed compared to what it was I was used to. Packages coming in the mail was always, it was just always a special deal. And anybody growing up in the 70s, 80s, and 90s knew that up until those times, there was no real big deal. There was no special company. It was all, I mean, there was UPS, but it's not to the massive amounts that it is said today. So, I think I've said enough to understand, but packages, they happened, but they wasn't in great deal, except when it came Christmas time, um, where big boxes containing many gifts were sent in from families or going out to families, and we had to inspect them all. And I'll go into that in a little bit. But here, the guard would have all this with him. He would set it up. There wasn't a number saying, there was nothing, no concerns. As long I would grab it, flip through a magazine, and put it in the box that would just go back to the DIR communications as the general in compartment or in box or in container, and he would draw from it and route it where it needs to go. We would create piles of discovery of a particular letter that would come in. We may read something and go, either the family members expressed some upset they have by not hearing from them. Um, they've communicated, hey, this is my view on Scientology and it's not favorable. Hey, there's a death in the family, or a family member or a good friend of your past is not doing well. That would be a point of concern, because we consider that an external influence. And, at one time I used to think, I don't know if we were specifically directed to do it, but the guard, if he found any level of concern, he would probably pull it and go send it to the person's HR representative and add a note to it saying, I think this may be a distraction for so. So say, for me as an example, if I were to receive a letter from my family saying, hey, your high school buddy Tim, he's in the hospital and he's not doing well, that came in the letter, my guard would put a note and route it to my INR or my boss, and say, hey, Jackson's got a friend here that's probably down and out, and you may want to just talk to him about, see how he's doing with it. We would go that far of what we'd look for in the letters. And then obviously any obvious verbal, written attacks, negative expressions of Scientology and its image, and how come I never hear from yous? And, it wasn't like your uncle has never heard from you since you were six. We may take interest in that and read into it beyond what it is. The uncle may be just pissed because he's never heard from him since he was 6 and never put 2 and 2 and never knew he was in Scientology. It's just, that's internal family business, that another family member is saying, hey, your uncle's pissed off at you. Why don't you write him or call him? That's just casual conversation, but we would make a meal out of a snack and sit the person down and go, what's this business about your uncle being upset with you? Is it has anything to do with Scientology? Yada, 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 so, try to just give you reality what it was like to check the mail. So having discovered that, there was a log that was created for that day of the mail that was checked, of the situations discovered in the mail. And it was generally logged with a general description and who it was routed to. And then it was, at that point, the guard's responsibility to follow up on said letter and see to it that situation was addressed and handled. So there was always somebody there to push through getting whatever was deemed wrong in the mail, insecure in the mail, whatever. Uh, there was a push by the guards to see to it that it was addressed and handled. And addressed and handled meaning brought to resolution to where there's no more negatively expressed about Scientology, or there's no, which I'm going to assume some of you may have already become part of, no PTS situation, or this is not deemed a potential trouble source situation requiring further handling from the church. But it basically was the ability of the church giving itself the ability to capture any external influence that would land on the staff members' lines, that the church could capture and address and thus control any attack on Scientology. And yeah, there's so much can be said about it. So using that as an example, the logging of that situation would be made by the guard, and the guard then would become responsible. That would be turned into his daily statistic, his representation of what he had performed and achieved for the day, and show that he's up or down on the discovery of what he found in the mail. So sometimes you would get the mail, there'd be no situations in it, and this by default his stats would be down, and he'd have to take one for the team and be penalized for it, a discipline to some level, simply because everybody got along great in the mail. How's that? He had no control over that, but it played a big role on his outlook of his future. How's that? So I need to take a little sip here. So other aspects of the mail. And again, during the times that I checked the mail, I was either just a general guard or I became head of security, where I oversaw. I no longer checked the mail myself unless all my guards were extremely timed up and there's by default no one else to do it, but I had to see to it the mail still moved for the day. I would check the mail myself, but it became a very labor intensive affair, and it went on for years, from 82, at least from 1982 when I first arrived there up until I left in 97. It was going strong, and I can't see if it ever being, the church going, we're no longer going to check mail. It's too much of a threat. It's not legal. La, la, la. If the church attorney screamed out enough, they could get Dave Miscavige to stop the practice. But Dave would never let that happen, because it is truly a source of information and an ability to control the staff, at least on the information level of collecting data collection about the staff member, unbeknownst to them, and where the church can pounce and act before the staff member or the situation can pounce and act against the church. So you tell me, is the mail still being inspected at the church? Yes. Is it as intense and active down in Los Angeles? By default, I would say no, because you'd have to have a whole separate production unit set up just to manage the mail itself. I'm sure they pick and choose and look out for stuff, but I'm sure there's not somebody, I don't know. I highly suspect that there's somebody who truly inspects all incoming and outgoing mail for everybody down there in the Los Angeles area. There may be a mail checker at the Hollywood Guarantee building over there on Hollywood Boulevard, because that is there's a smaller number of staff there, so you can control that activity there a lot better than you could back in the general Los Angeles area, in the buildings and the big blue buildings. So I don't know. It really matters of how much they concern themselves with it. So OSA, we know that you do it. We just don't know to what extent. And yeah, okay, whatever. But we could put a test to it. We can test their mail lines. We can see. You guys can write in and see if it makes it to anybody, and you get a prompt. We could screw with them. I'm not interested in creating things, but it's pretty sad that they actually check the mail and leave the staff members' freedom of choice on their communication lines out of it, and yet they control it. That's just wrong. It's illegal. So forth. I see another question popping up here. From Witness. Question: Jackson, would COS Church of Scientology ever use a hired company to check the mail? Nope. That would expose them to the outside world, and they would never do that. No. That would be, if there was a hired outside company, that would be a company indulging in illegal activities, and by default, that wouldn't work. There's nothing legal in this world where you can profit off of checking people's personal mail. So That's my educated answer to you. Or would they always handle that in-house? So therefore, yes, always in-house, always in-house. Thank you, witness, for that. I also see Peter Anderson's here, making chit chat with other people. Not sure who is it. Kayi Thompson. Well, good evening to you. I hope you are keeping well. Hello, everyone. I am keeping well. I thank you for asking. Let's see. Okay, back to the topic at hand. Yes, too many secrets, witness. Yeah, would a company actually do that, though, since it's against the law? Highly doubt it. Just as I believe that nobody has physically reduced the pulse in somebody, they wouldn't stoop that low to commit an otherwise simply proven criminal act, because that is a federal violation to mess with people's mail. And even, wow, sounds like my house is settling, or it's windy. You know, when you hear cracks in the wood, makes you wonder if Bigfoot's up there. Sound like Bigfoot just traveled over my roof. But yeah, there's a lot to simply be said, but highly doubt that they would. I don't know, Osa. Kick in the chat here and tell us whether you're still um, handle it in-house or hire outside company or third party to deal with it. Don't know. I'm sorry for my blambering every now and then. I'm still getting used to the mental. I'm having a conversation with somebody who's not in front of me. I'm having it with my phone I'm staring at, and I see people in the chat. It just kind of messes with that natural flow of having a conversation uh, without somebody in front of you. So sorry if I seem a little awkward at times. Here's Lori Plays. It is my understanding that all Scientologists are given a disk to make their I am a Scientologist page, and that disk installs a filter on their computer to how they control the flow. Yes. Now, Lori, that at one time did exist. That existed back in the early 2000s. That was the church's in-house idea of inundating the internet with increased search results on Google. That was like the initial, what do we need to do to make us stand out when people Google Scientology? That the church offering up this software where you can create your own website, and but unbeknownst to them, they had these little programs added into them that controlled people's things. That once the disk, it was like a, what do you call that? Um, spam or mail spam or whatever. I'm not focused on that technology right now, but yes, unbeknownst to the church parishioners, when they received their disc to create their I Am a Scientologist website, they weren't aware that they were installing some controlling software to their computer that choked them off of discovery of the bad things of Scientology on the internet. So I know there was a term for it because I used to look for it when I was in security and I was on the income mission. I know there's an actual technical term for it. Net nanny. There you go, witness. That is what it was called. That was exactly the program. It was called Net Nanny. And that says so much in itself. Yes, Net Nanny. Witness has hit. Yes. Witness has hit it. Yes. Let's see. Peter Anderson. If someone lost an e-meter, would the church member return it to the church or turn it over to the police? Be completely up to the individual. The church has it set it up to have proprietary control at a software program level, that even if somebody were to get into it, they couldn't access the heart of the information that they would be after. There's nothing stopping them from possessing an e-meter, and they realize that, but they do all they can do by having the blanket label on the back that this Scientology ultimately owns this device. It's a violation of trademarks to mess with it, yada, yada, yada. But, it's just like the old original Walkman, Sony Walkman. There's nothing stopping. Once you sell it, there's not stopping anybody from opening it up and discovering how it's made, and then they'll turn around and making one themselves. I mean, fuck, who'd be interested in making a e-meter in today's world, right? But yeah, I do remember being at the base once, and there was a flap, which is means a major situation was discovered requiring immediate all hands on deck to address and handle. That back in the, I want to say the late '80s, uh, somebody had late '80s, early '90s. Maybe it was more the early '90s because the internet had become more prominent. People were starting to realize the capabilities and what you can do on the internet. Somebody had posted on there that there was an e-meter for sale, and like God forbid somebody else possess one. So this project and people are made responsible to track that down and get it back in the church's possession, even though that person that was discovered to have had it had all the right in the world to resell it himself. The church was like, there ain't no way, Jose, you're going to have that. So a lot of effort was spent to track it down and reclaim back in the church's possession. So, and that was David Miscavige's drive to protect the trademarks and what is that? The trademarks and all the trademarks and what is it? Trademarks? Gosh. RTC's primary role was to protect the trademarks of Scientology in all its aspects. So, God, why can't I think beyond? There's something trademarks and something else. It's quite common, right? The proprietary ownership of stuff. Respectfully, there's laws that are in place giving recognition to the true ownership of this, and not anybody has free, open use of it to capitalize and make money off of it. So, intellectual property, trademarks, publications, yes. That is religious technologies, and specifically Dave Miscavige's ultimate simple rule. But the fact that they advanced all the Scientology materials and inner secrets, inner high level secrets are out on the internet, that is a complete failure of David Miscavige that to any other standard in the C organization you would be obliterated for. But Dave Miscavige is untouchable, and no one will talk about that white elephant in the room and hold him accountable for it. But they just let it be. Yeah, copyrights and trademarks. Thank you. Copyrights and trademarks. So intellectual property, trademarks, publications, and copyrights. Yeah. And yeah, the church holds no patents. I think that they're under the names of other staff. Like there was Bruce Plotz and Gary Liu. They hold some sort of trademarks. They were staff of it and part of the designers and creators of certain proprietary operational aspects of the e-meter and also the read simulator. And also there was the sound system, clear sound standard that was created and designed internally in the church to create this. It was like Dolby sound. Well, the church had its own Dolby. It was called Clear Sound, and that was trademarked. And that was created by a gentleman by the name of Steve Marlowe, Gary Liu, John Horwich, a work of the artistic and electronically creative work and I wanted to say intuition, but intellectual design and use of these fine individuals that brought about the church having created Clear Sound. And that was just a higher quality of audio standards that the church discovered and set for themselves to make sure that their own lectures and films were as crystal clear as they could be with full sound on their audiovisual products. So Witness, yeah, they hold no patents. Maybe they have expired now, and the outside worldwide world doesn't realize that someone else can actually own Scientology's trademarks and make a profit off of them. But I think what is it, every 4 or 15 years or whatever the legal expiration date on it, the church pays the money necessary to retain those copyrights. Where typically, in today's world, the original creator of such thing that holds a trademark of something, they just let it go for the initial time frame and let the free world get their share of it too. Not knowing much about it, I've just come to witness it. Dreamscape. When you were head of security, what aspect do you think was the weakest part of security of the base? Hmm. There's a lot. I almost don't want to speak about it because only on the basis that those weaknesses were or the ones that were discovered, staff eventually discovered they escaped, of which we would discover later of how they escaped through that, and we end up going buttoning it up. So for the ones that I know that exist, I choose to remain quiet to afford those still in as another means to get out. Hopefully that makes sense. And I wouldn't want to give the satisfaction to those listening in OSA. Quick, we need to get blah blah buttoned up or sewed up or fixed or whatever. Because yes, I do know security weaknesses, and there's a lot of things that are very, very much in your face and available, but they don't have they just don't have the knowledge of today's world to realize that they need to do certain things. So I'll leave it up to them to discover that on their own. Yet they'll always claim that they got the highest and best quality and the best homework and background into such things. So Dreamscape, I get it if you don't want to explain. Thank you. Well, yeah, and please don't feel I'm like peeing in your cornflakes for asking, but I think you do see the reason why I choose not to be so open about the details that I know. And I ain't going to claim that I know a tremendous amount, but I know enough that it would be yet another hole plugged in the potential out for somebody. And I do not want to afford them that. I want to keep it simple. So thank you for understanding. Appreciate that. Let's see. Okay, so back to the mail. I just want to make sure that I covered it, the topic of this whole video in the first place. I think I last explained to you what we would do with situations discovered in the mail, and how it was routed, and the responsibilities held against who, and how much effort was put into seeing to that it was addressed and handled. And attention would there go away from it once we concluded and confirmed that it actually was addressed and handled, and a resolution one way or the other was arrived at. So let's see. Having said that, there was also the fact of packages. Particularly Christmas was a time which this was a significant issue because we did not want the staff to feel restricted on their freedom of sending gifts to their family, but we we found ourselves being de facto gift wrappers, in the sense that we had instructed the staff to box their gifts but not wrap them, but include the wrapping paper and the tape they choose to want to have their gift wrapped in, and we would end up wrapping it ourselves. And that, I felt awkward about that because that didn't allow the person to have any personalization to the gift. I mean, the whole idea of a gift, right, is from beginning to end, it's coming from your heart and your love for them. But you know, all they can pass on was a cardboard box with the gift inside in hopes that I would wrap it to any standard. And anybody in the gift wrapping world, there's standards to be met, and you can either wrap it like a Jackson would, or you can wrap it like a Martha Stewart would. So in most cases, people naturally drive to want to wrap it like Martha Stewart would. And I didn't have the time to learn from Martha Stewart, so I do the best I could, right? So there was kind of that mixed emotion in there when we tried to do the best we could. Sometimes us guards would set aside a particular time because we were inundated with so many gifts. We would do an all hands where we would bring all hands in to deal with many packages all in a short time frame. So we would set somebody up to be exclusively the wrappers, and we would rotate guards to discover who could do the best wrapping. And that was found by default. And they would become the ones that would wrap stuff. So and then I think eventually it got into sending unwrapped gifts only. And just that's what the staff were forced to do. And give their own lame explanation to their family members why it wasn't wrapped. Like, oh, I forgot to get wrapping paper. Sorry, but here's your gift anyways, type of thing. You know, again, that the church dictating staff members' quality of life standards, and the staff members dig deep of how do I handle this on behalf of the church. Just, it's a weird thing to witness, which is, again, the purpose of why I come here to you folks today, to help you better understand the threads of what make up what Scientology became and what it is today. And to help you better understand it. If you're somebody who's flying under the radar, help you better understand what you became involved in or became witness to or became victim of, my actions or others' actions or church policies and all that. So I just find when you discover little behind the scene details like this, it helps bring one's ability to have resolution to their own mental trauma and conflicts that you're just forced to live with and try to figure it out on your own. So that's the way I feel that I can help people in little ways. So let's see. I get it if you don't want to. Okay, I think I already answered Dreamscape. Sorry about that, good sir. Yeah, so I should be current on that. So let's see more on the mail. I can't emphasize how mail was a pretty significant aspect of security. If there was any activities or responsibilities of security would let fall to the wayside, mail was not one of them. Because mail afforded it primarily afforded a big factor, and that was the interactions that staff within the perimeter fences had with the outside world, because we pretty much were able to control their physical ability to come and go freely. We just choked that off by having a very well established and well functioning security system. Well, people can still um, communicate with the outside world through the mail. And if we didn't do what we did, they could build all sorts of plans and send out all sorts of information through the U.S. mail, and that would buckle the church and the base at its knees. So, yeah, there you have it. Um, I'm sure, if you look at our government agencies, that was something that was looked into to how do they do it, because those are obviously, there's legal means, and it's generally understood by society that anybody that works in that working, all of their communications are going to be there's a definite security aspect that needs to be applied, and a responsibility of security as an employee of the government that you have to uphold for the security of the government to successfully function and act as a government. So that all makes sense. Um, but little tidbits that we can learn from that, we would apply to our in-house rules and policies and try to match those higher level, in-depth response, higher in-depth procedures and practices to keep our mail lines secure and safe. So yeah. Oh my lordy, lord, there is the nurse who loved me, 89. Good morning from Perth, Australia. Nice to see you back. Well, thank you. I thank you for showing up. I kind of do this at a time frame where I feel people such as yourself, uh, I catch you at a good time for you to dip in here and listen live. So I guess I was successful simply for you. Um, let's see other aspects of the mail. Um, I can't think of anything beyond what I've already told you, but I hope that encapsulate from beginning to end what I witnessed from when I first arrived at the base up until my last day there. And then my uh, my my belief, my educated belief, my educated opinion. Does it still go on today? Absolutely. To think that it doesn't would mean you would also find fences being removed. They no longer have perimeter fences, no longer having security in your face equipment, and in your face security equipment such as the lighting, the ultra barrier, the wrought iron fences, security guards, and all that. That none of that is weakened, nor has the mail, especially at the base. Whether the mail inspections occur as they do at the base down in Los Angeles, I seriously doubt it, but I'm sure there's some form of control of it, enough that they can control with the high numbers. Or there's just a lot going on down in Los Angeles, and up at the base, it's all funneling into and out of one point, so it's easier to control. Uh, they may have taken the time and figured all out how to do it, and yeah, put it in play. It wouldn't surprise me. How's that? So that would be my answer. Um, and Mrs. Peace out, Jackson. Well, peace out to you and the Mrs. Have a beautifully blessed rest of your day. Well, thank you. And you too. I thank you for stopping by. All right. Well, we're up to hour and 44 minutes. I think it's a time to come to end. I believe that I fulfilled filling in or providing you with a lot of little tidbits and how the mail lines worked, how I helped develop them and how they worked, and uh what they potentially still are today, but how very intrusive was. Oh, one other aspect to the mail I should add. Part of the mail lines, we would collect information about individuals, and that would include people who had established accounts outside of the base with either magazines or banks or financial institutions or whatever would come in. If somebody was offered get a credit card, 0% down type crap, what you get in the mail today, they filled it out, sent it back out. Well, we would see that information and start capturing it, or just make a record that they applied for an American Express card and look for it coming back in. And when they come in, we would capture all that bank information. So it was really easy to discover people's maiden names, the typical answers to security questions, especially back in the day that the banks would ask of you. We were able to keep track of that. So a record was created of all the base staff who had such credit cards and bank information. That was how I captured it, and I utilized that collection of information against the staff member. Sadly, if they chose to leave or we found them missing, it was my ability to find them a lot faster by simply having that information. And eventually, staff became aware of that, and they would blow or take off on a cash only basis. They would save up cash in their own pocket so they can avoid exposing themselves through the use of debit or credit cards or the electronic financial institutions of today's world. So that's how they would defeat me of finding them. So I would figure out another way to find them outside of that. So yes, Dreamscape, the lack of privacy, although we know it exists, is absolutely mind-blowing. Mind-blowing in the church. You think it's disrupting to know how it exists nowadays? We live more of a life of defending ourselves of people getting into our electronic world. That's how we've come to learn life. Whereas in the Sea Organization, it's expected of you to be transparent and open and give that information. And when you don't, we're going to look into you as to why and pester you mentally and spiritually and physically until you give it up. And if you don't want to give it up, we're going to get rid of you and treat you as a piece of shit because you still haven't told us why you're not willing to give this information up, when it was just simply you utilizing and expressing your freedom of speech and freedom of choice, which was all of play. So it again is part of that cult mindset. Scientology is unique in its own cult. I don't know if other cults do this. I've never come to discover other cults have, but that again is one factor that makes Scientology stand tall above other cults, is that their control and of the information that I've just laid out on how mail is handled and personal information is obtained and utilized against that individual. When the time comes for the church to be self-serving for the church. So it is quite disgusting, quite disgusting. So there you have it, an hour 48 minutes in. I thank you all for being here. I hope I got to all the questions. I'm sorry, I'm quickly scrolling back through. I don't see any that, let me see if this was one. Would you censor the information coming out? How would you look for? Yes, I address that. Yeah, so did the best I can. You are also free to write me or email me at firefighter02. That's firefighter, the number 02, all is one, at outlook.com. And we can continue our conversation there. And I can answer more questions if you so like. If not, I'll be doing more lives. I'm hopeful to afford myself some time to do one tomorrow or Friday or Saturday in the next 24, 48 hours. I plan to come back because I have a list of stuff I hope to bring to your guys' table. So thank you, Lori, for coming here to listen to the goobly gob and bumblings that come out of my mouth. I thank you. All right, folks. Well, there you have it. And until next time, I'm going to do the best I can to make it even more distraction free and more fluent is the best of my ability. All right, there's the end stream, and see you until next time. Bye bye. Hit the end.